Support for this podcast comes from the Central Valley Journalism Collaborative, connecting communities with the resources, infrastructure, and networks to ensure a vibrant local free press.
From KVPR in Fresno, this is Central Valley Daily. Happy Friday, it's March 21st. I'm Elizabeth Arkalian. This weekend, the Fresno State Orchestra is debuting a piece called Uranium 235. It's written by composer Eric Zeisel.
I think he was struggling with the question that we are all struggling with in our lives. So many times we ask, can we do something? And not enough times do we ask, should we do something?
Zeisel wrote the piece right after the atomic bombings in Japan. Coming up, we'll learn more about his motivation for the music. But first, these news headlines. An adult and child have tested positive for measles in Tuolumne County. Health officials in the county are working to identify others who might have been exposed. The vaccination status of the two patients is not yet confirmed. Residents are urged to ensure their vaccination status is current. Fresno County has also recorded 2 cases of measles in recent weeks, and health officials say anyone who might have been exposed to measles should monitor for symptoms. The U.S. mail is not for sale. That was the rallying cry from dozens of postal workers outside a Bakersfield courthouse on Thursday. KVPR's Joshua Yeager reports they're fighting against the potential privatization of one of the nation's oldest institutions.
U.S. mail, not for sale.
Postal workers are protesting plans for what they're describing as an illegal, hostile takeover of the Postal Service. President Trump is considering transferring control of the independent agency to the Federal Department of Commerce and a potential sale to private investors. Brendan Butner is president of the American Postal Workers Union Local 482 in Kern County. He argues that would significantly impact mail deliveries in the San Joaquin Valley and across rural America.
If privatization does take place, the service standard is going to go way down. People won't be able to get their mail. They might have to drive hundreds of miles to get their medication.
Thursday's rally is part of a nationwide demonstration against the Trump administration's plans. Any changes to how the Postal Service is run would require approval by Congress. For KVPR News, I'm Joshua Yeager in Bakersfield.
Meanwhile, in Tulare, community groups held a town hall last night to call attention to possible cuts to Medicaid. They even invited Republican Congressman David Valadao as they met in his district. However, he did not attend. Valadao's congressional district has the highest Medicaid enrollment rate in the country, and some of his constituents say they are concerned about potential cuts to the program. It provides subsidized health insurance to low-income Americans. Justine Santos is with Power CA Action. That's a progressive group that helped organize the town hall.
Community members have a lot of questions around, is their Medi-Cal threatened? Are they going to have health care? And we know that 67% of Valadao's constituents rely on Medi-Cal, which is a pretty significant population.
On Thursday, advocacy groups also protested potential cuts to Medicaid in Fresno. A California Senate bill that would have expanded school choice was shot down this week. The bill would have helped parents pay for tuition to attend private school. It was introduced by Bakersfield State Senator Shannon Grove, but was voted down by the Senate Education Committee. School choice has been a contentious topic in the last few years. Proponents say parents should have the right to choose where their children go to school, no matter where they live. If passed, Grove's bill would have given parents at least $8,000 for tuition.
If public radio didn't already exist, we'd need to invent it. Do you really trust a billionaire to deliver your news? What about a hedge fund? Or AI with its hallucinations? Public radio is great because the listener comes first, not profit. Help keep the freely accessible information on KVPR, free with your donation today. Become a monthly member at kvpr.org/donate. And thanks.
And now to our main story. This weekend, the Fresno State Symphony Orchestra is performing the world premiere of Uranium 235. The piece is by composer Eric Zeisel. The debut is part of the campus's Violin and Viola Festival. Seisel, who was Jewish and fled Austria during the Nazi invasion, wrote the piece in 1945, just months after the U.S. dropped the atomic bomb. This dramatic piece explores human emotion and scientific discovery and has never been played until now. That's thanks to modern technology, which ironically is one of the underpinning themes of the piece. Originally written as a ballet, Uranium 235 asks the question, are technological advancements, like the atomic bomb, ultimately good for humans? It's a big question that Thomas Lownehiem is exploring as Director of Orchestras at Fresno State. He came to the KVPR studios, cello in tow, to discuss the upcoming performance of Uranium 235. He starts by giving us some background on the composer.
Well, Erich Zeisel was an Austrian composer that was born in Austria, in Vienna, and became a very prolific and very good composer. And then during the Second World War, he escaped Vienna and arrived in Los Angeles. And he kept composing. He was also teaching in Los Angeles. And he was actually in this group of composers like Arnold Schoenberg, like Korngold, like even Stravinsky, who escaped World War II and ended up in Hollywood. He wrote a few film music, a couple of scores, but he really wanted to focus on what we call classical or traditional music. He wrote quite a few orchestral pieces, lots of chamber music, and many, many songs.
Okay, and this Saturday you will be conducting the Fresno State Symphony Orchestra in the premiere of Seisel's piece titled Uranium 235. Seisel wrote this piece just after the dropping of the atomic bombs in Japan in 1945. What would you say he's sort of trying to convey through this piece?
Yes, that's an excellent question. I mean, of course, emotionally, we can feel from the music how strong the music is, how dramatic it is. I think he was struggling with the question that we are all struggling with in our lives. So many times we ask, can we do something? And not enough times do we ask, should we do something, right? And when we're talking about science, especially, so at the time it was the atom bomb, the ballet is really about a couple that is wondering against the scientist, and the scientist is the evil guy in the ballet, right? And then the couple, they just want to live in peace and in harmony and in a beautiful world, and the scientist is developing the atom bomb, and they're begging him not to do it because they know the consequences and what they can be, right? And the music is very powerful. I mean, when we played it for the first time with the orchestra at Fresno State, they go like, well, that sounds familiar and that sounds like John Williams, or that's not. But I was like, yes, but it was written 30, 40 years before all the music that is to you familiar today. So with our ears at 80 years ago, this piece is very revolutionary. The harmonies are powerful. The music, the sound effect, he's using a very large orchestra with a very large percussion, a piano and a celesta, 2 harps, and of course, full strings and winds and brass. And you can really hear the dilemma within the composer, within what he was going through and what he's trying to portray. And to me, in today's world, where we're dealing with now AI, I mean, should we or shouldn't we? We know we now can, but where is it going to lead? What is it going to do? What are the effects? And I think it's such a concurrent point in our lives today that this music is just very powerful and very meaningful on just so many different levels.
Yeah.
Not to mention the fact that it was never performed before. So it was written 80 years ago, and it remained in a manuscript form for the orchestra score and the piano reduction. And Gabor Lukin took the time to bring the piece back to life, put it into the computer, and he created a full score and parts. So it's just kind of like both a combination of looking back and looking forward.
And using modern technology to bring it to life while questioning whether modern technology should be implemented to the extent that it is these days.
That is absolutely correct. And it's for us, it's just a very special moment in time.
Now, this piece was actually written to be accompanied by a ballet, and you shared those ballet notes with us. The first scene, which you mentioned, struck me because it has this idyllic young couple being confronted by the researcher, as you mentioned, and that researcher has a, quote, dangerous ambition to liberate nuclear energy. That researcher is then being followed by Satan, many evil-looking creatures. How does Seisel convey that in the piece?
So it starts very beautiful and very calm with pianissimos in the strings. And from there on, he's going into these dramatic marches. It sounds a little bit like the Darth Vader march, but is a little bit different as well. Deep melodies and very strong. He later on uses the entire orchestra in effects of very short and abrupt strokes, both in the strings and then adding bells and adding short woodwind strokes as well. And on top of that, a dramatic melody, and then contrasting it with very beautiful harmonic sections, right, that are calm and gorgeous melodies. Zeisel, being the fantastic composer that he was, he also includes several fugues. And fugues, as we know, is looking back into the tradition of Johann Sebastian Bach, but also he inputs the characteristics of contemporary composers into those complex fugues, using the melodies that he was using before, and by that bringing everything into a very complex musical statement that evolves into big climaxes. And it's really amazing how after every kind of climax, talking about the scientist and Satan and all and the drama, how it then beautiful humanity is always prevailing. And it's really fantastic because then at the very end he's doing it for the final time, and he has the longest beautiful quiet section that slowly grows in dynamics. And for the last 5 minutes of the piece he also adds sopranos, and the dramatic effect of just adding the voices at the end into the final ascent is really powerful.
You are selling it. I have to come and see this. Pivoting back to a little bit more about Zeisel's personal experience, he was Jewish and had to escape Austria after the Nazi annexation, as you mentioned. Having to deal with the realities of war personally, do you think that comes out in this piece?
Absolutely. The answer is absolutely. And I think that me, myself, being a grandson of Holocaust survivors, and I don't know if I mentioned, but my family is actually related to Eric Zeisel, and through my mother and Mr. Zeisel. And then back to your question. Everyone, I mean, it's amazing how even somebody like me is still feeling that growing up, I grew up in Israel, and growing up in Israel with grandparents who survived, it was a constant theme that was going on in our family. You never let it go. And even my kids already have been to 2 Holocaust museums. This conversation is being talked about all the time about what do we learn from history? What can we take out of it? How much did we suffer? How much did we lose? Over 90% of my family was lost in the Holocaust. And even my children live through that feeling, lives through this past. And it is definitely put into the music. You can feel the emotional content of the despair, of the wondering. We all want to have peace, and we all want to get up in the morning and have a peaceful life, and how easy it is for it to disappear, to go away, and what are the effects.
And since you're premiering Uranium 235 this Saturday, we don't have a recording of the work yet. But we did want to play one of Zeisel's pieces. You recommended this one titled Little Symphony. This is the Fresno State Orchestra performing the last movement of the piece in 2009, titled Expulsion of the Saints. Let's give that a listen. So fantastic. Thomas, before we let you go, anything else you'd like to share?
Yes, I would like to share that we do have a pre-concert talk at 6:45 in the band room, which is just adjacent to the concert hall. And Dr. Kloon and Dr. Oya are going to talk about the topic that we just described, about what it is like in today's perspective to the time that they were going at the time. And both professors are truly incredible and groundbreaking, and to have them collaborate with us and join into this project is thanks to our very supportive dean, Nora Chapman, who is bringing all of us together. And I think it's the job of us artists and humanists to come together and discuss the philosophical questions of the world, and including science advancements and how can we do things, how can we go forward, but also feel safe or feel secure and feel that we can maintain a certain feeling of peace and calmness within ourselves.
And that talk is titled Turning Point, Dropping Atomic Bombs 80 Years Later. Thomas Lownehiem, Director of Orchestras at Fresno State. Thank you so much.
Absolutely my pleasure, and thank you for having me and promoting our concerts. We appreciate it.
You can find details for the events taking place tonight and tomorrow on the Fresno State online calendar. And that is today's show. We hope you have a nice weekend ahead of you, and happy spring. Today's episode was produced by Jonathan Linden and KVPR with support from the Central Valley Journalism Collaborative. I'm Elizabeth Arkalian. You can find the latest local news anytime at kvpr.org.
Each morning, it's a new opportunity, a chance to start fresh. Up First from NPR makes each morning an opportunity to learn and to understand. Choose to join the world every morning with Up First, a podcast that hands you everything going on across the globe and down the street, all in 15 minutes or less. Start your day informed and anew with Up First by subscribing wherever you get your podcasts.